Welcome, curious souls and wandering night owls. You've stumbled upon a place where the strange becomes familiar and the familiar turns to strange. I'm your host, Ryder, here to spin you a tale or perhaps a warning. Now, before we get started, it seems like last time we had some ghosts messing with the wires got the better of us. More technical hiccups than a fella after too much moonshine. But fret not, friends, for tonight we're setting the record straight. That's right, we will be rereading those spinning, tingling tales from the last broadcast, loud and clear, just as they were meant to be. Now, let's see. Where's my papers? And, here we are. So we'll be starting off with Rice Man once again, since he was, his story was the first, but also the first to find out the ghosts were messing with my tech, horrible modern day contraptions. Now, let's see, back to the start, and here we are. There have been several reported sightings of a giant humanoid wolf spotted in Bray Road, Elkhorn, WI. A reporter named Linda Godfrey was the first to interview the eyewitness, the most prominent being from Lori and Drizzy. Bray Road, a quite stretch of road in Wisconsin that became a stuff of nightmares. I've actually never heard of that place, which I might actually need to look into more. The year was 1989. It was 1:30 in the morning. Lori was driving home from work on Bray Road. She hit a curve on the road and saw what she first thought was a man kneeling on the side of the road, but soon realized it was far from human. Let's put ourselves in her shoes for a moment. Alone in the dead of night, barely any streetlights, and suddenly this thing crouched on the roadside. I don't even know if I could imagine seeing something like that. I think I'd keep driving. She'd slowed down until she was about 6 feet away from it to get a close look. She said it had brown and silver hair with fangs and long claws. Its chin and nose were also long, and it appeared to be holding roadkills in its paws. Brown and silver fur, fangs, claws. That just sounds completely out of a horror film. Don't know if I could do something like that. But the beast didn't pursue her as she started to drive away, but instead just watched her with a cold, eerie stare. 2 years later, another woman encountered the beast. Doris Gibson was driving through Bray Road on a foggy Halloween night to pick up her friend from a party. As she reached down to her radio to change the song, she felt a massive thump under her car. Now, if that was me, I wouldn't stop. I would just keep going. It is already scary. It's already scary enough hearing stories about that as is. Thinking she had hit an animal, she slowed down and looked at her rearview mirror. But it was too dark to see anything. She parked the car and stepped out to assess the damage. When she got to the back of her car, she was surprised to find nothing there. Seconds later, she heard a loud rustling sound and saw something tall and large charging out of the brush. Now that's the moment when I know I am dead. I would be completely out, just trying to get back into my car one way or another. Doris sprung back to her car, locked the door, and hit the gas. The hairy creature ran on its hind legs and caught up to the car. It lunged onto the trunk, but it's lost its grip and slid off onto the road. While interviewed by Linda Godfrey, Doris referred to it as a freak of nature and claimed the trunk of her car was scratched with visible claw marks from the attack. Now, if it was me, I guess it really depends on the claw marks. If it was... Because certain animals, I don't think bears or any woodland creatures would do such a thing, really. Unless if there's like a wild lion out there, maybe. And supposedly that's the beast of Bray Road. I wonder if there's more on that. Maybe some of my friends out there could tell me more about that. Anyways, on to the next one. Now, again. This one's from an unknown. I don't know if this will make sense. I need to tell someone. Maybe if I write it down, it'll stop. This all started 2 weeks ago when I was driving home late at night. I worked a graveyard shift at a warehouse, and a commute takes me down this road. Empty stretch of road surrounded by trees. It's one of those places where streetlights are far apart, leaving huge patches of darkness between them. I remember going down a stretch of road, something like that, but of course, I don't think I actually ever had to worry about stuff like that because we didn't have streetlights or anything like that. We did have to worry about deer, though. That night I saw something. At first I thought it was an animal, a deer or maybe a coyote. Something low to the ground, but as I got closer I realized it wasn't. It was a person, a woman. She was crouched on all fours, in the middle of the road, her hair hanging in her face like it was soaking wet. I barely had time to swerve, and when I looked in my rearview mirror, she was standing. Now again, like Briar Road, I think I would have probably just kept hitting the gas. I'd have no reason to just stop. I would have just kept going. Not like she had gotten up. Like she had just appeared there, staring after me. I drove home faster than I ever had before, heart pounding, head shaking. I told myself I was just tired, that my brain was playing tricks on me, but then knocking started. I think I'd probably believe the same thing, that it was just all in my head after a long night graveyard shift. The first time I was in bed, half asleep, I heard 3 knocks on my bedroom window, soft, deliberate. My room is on the 2nd floor. Now, if I was hearing knocks on the 2nd floor, I'd probably be concerned of a robber more than anything. The next night, it was my front door, then my closet. Every night since then, the knocking has continued. Always at a different place, always at 3:13 a.m. I stopped sleeping. I stopped checking. I know better. But tonight, I don't think it's going to knock. I'm watching my bedroom door right now. It's open. I always close it. Always. I don't want to look, but I can hear something breathing in the dark. If I don't send another email, don't look for me. Now, again, this was one of the second stories we did, and when I rereading it now, it's made me think that more people's probably had these encounters before. Though they all still seem I'm still very skeptic on stuff like that. Mostly because you gotta think about what the circumstances are to have such things happen like that. As if Indian burial grounds, for example, how often do you run into those? Or a loved one passes on. Like, why would a loved one passing on haunt you? That's one thing I never understood. So then you got like haunted prisons, haunted hotels, etc., etc. I don't know how most of that stuff works. It'd be interesting if we had more solid proof, but stories are all I can tell right now. So let's see. Trying to find the next one before I start, we are going to conclude these for now, but don't wander too far. I'll be stepping away for 5 minutes, letting some smooth jazz fill the air while we catch our breath, stretch, grab a drink, and let the story sink in. Now... just like that, we have returned from the void. Refreshed, recharged, and ready to weave more tales into the night, the jazz fades, the signal steadies. Now, where were we? Yes, we were moving on to the next story. Let's see. Should we... Looking through my notes. This one. This one was a decently interesting one. And once again, darling, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but Aura. I know I'm bad at names. I think by this point, we all know I'm not good with names. All right, so I've grown up in an old house. My grandparents' place is from the 1649, and was a plantation house from an attempt by the English to colonize Ireland. Now that right there already. Now that I'm looking it over again, the plantation part is already what would freak me out. Don't know why they decided to own this place, but 'tis your own. The house has 3 floors, and the basement has arrow slits to protect in case of siege. Arrow slits. I'm wondering if that's the carved little slits there in halls. If you look at old castles, they have those small arrowed windows. I wonder if that's what that meant. It's permanently cold down there, regardless of heating, and things bang and crash down there often. At night, when I'd stay at his house, I'd hear footsteps in the halls, a woman singing lullabies, and I refused to sleep on my own. There's a child after I woke up, feeling like my head was being stroked, and found no one there. Now that could be, honestly, that could be probably anything, but we'll see. The dogs would always bark down hallways at nothing, and as a child, I was apparently often found sitting around the house talking to someone who wasn't there. Now, I'd say that's probably what's that thing? Imaginary friend? There we go. Where people have like strong imaginations and they make up something. My aunt and uncle have had their first babies in the past 2 years, and their children have started doing the same. There's a man-made cave on the property that was used to store meat in the past. It has a small hole big enough for you to fit inside. Small hole, but big enough for you to fit inside. That doesn't sound small, but okay. In a large area that goes deep underground so the meat would stay cold. It has always been barred since long before I was born. But I used to call it the fairy cave because I saw fairies in there through the bars when I was younger. Saw fairies. Now I've heard stories about fairies. Now that's something I'd probably want to look up more on, see if we can find any more stories on that. I've heard a few tales, but mostly in the woods, not something in a cave. Not entirely sure what they were exactly were. There we go. But they weren't bugs, animals, or people. There's a castle on the property that overlooks a lake. It has a small ground floor and a spiral staircase up a turret that goes at 2 more floors to the roof. The second floor was a bedroom. Sometimes when my grandpa took me for walks, I'd see a figure walk past the window, and my granddad called her the Lady of the Lake. Now I think we've all had a version of Lady of the Lake in different media. Probably seen it in a newspaper or old books about this. Though in most of those stories, she would give the hero a sword of sorts. But I think this is a different one. Probably won't give me a sword of any kind. It's a small ground floor. Oh, wait. Lost my place. Lady of the Lake. Here we are. He called the woman who walked the halls at night the Duchess of Difflin, and named one of the trains in the property after her. My current house that we moved into a few months ago had 3 stages. Originally a farmhouse built in 1760 used to supply food for the war efforts. It created leather too and has a tannery from that period. It was then expanded to a larger house in order to accommodate the British king. Can't remember which one. During a visit, and was left untouched until my family bought it and renovated, repaired it starting 7 years ago. It's historical, so there's lots of rules on how you can and can't fix it, which is why it's taken 7 years for us to be able to move in. And in that time we've been here, we've heard women shouting, hello. Both my mom and I heard it, and no one else was home. We also heard someone sprint up the main staircase while actively looking at the staircase and seeing no one and doors open by themselves despite them being heavy fire doors. Heavy fire doors, are we talking like the metal fire doors? Or are we talking about something else? Really thick wood doors? In the outbuildings, old garages, sheds, things have fallen off my desk that were in the center of it and couldn't possibly have fallen themselves. Things have gone missing and returned, and weird black marks keep appearing on the walls. We can't figure out why. Okay, now that alone, the black marks sound demonic, I think is the word we're thinking. It sounds demonic. It doesn't sound natural. Black marks. It sounds like soot. But hopefully it's not that bad. But again, it was a old plantation, so it could be maybe something sinister since it's gone through 3 stages. And it does sound like it reminds me of those old medieval houses that has towers built next to them, but sounds a little off. Oh well. Now on to the next one. Let's see. Another unknown. Again, this one's a short one, so we might have to throw in. Now, I think I have one more good one after this unknown one. Is this it? Yep, here it is. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but I have to tell someone. I live in a rural area. That word always gets me. Mostly farmland and open fields. The kind of place where the night sky is so clear you can see every star. I've always loved looking up at them until last night. I was driving home late, down a lonely back road, when I saw lights in the sky. At first I thought they were just a plane, maybe a helicopter, but they weren't moving right. They were too still, just hovering, glowing this eerie bluish white. Then without warning, they shot across the sky at a speed that no human aircraft could manage. Then stopped dead again, like whatever it was had just blinked to a new spot. I think that's a very common thing for a lot of people that's experienced lights in the sky, in my opinion at least. But of course, every story about lights in the sky has always been kind of skeptical in my book. But it's always interesting to me one way or another. I pulled over, my heart pounding. That's when I noticed my radio had gone static. My headlights dimmed, like something was draining the power from the car. The air around me felt almost heavy, almost electric. Now that's actually something I hear a lot about in these stories with that kind of phenomenon. But it kind of reminds me, it almost sounds a little bit of it's an actual natural phenomenon where comes from water. I forgot what they're actually called. There's little electrical balls of lightning. You guys probably have heard about it at some point in the papers or something. And then the lights came down. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't listen to me. The light was blinding, filling my entire vision. I swear I could feel something watching me, studying me. And then I woke up. I was still in my car, engine off, parked in the middle of the road. The clock on my dash read 3:47 a.m. The last I checked, it had been just after midnight. I can't account for those missing hours. Now that's another thing I've seen in the papers too of these kind of stories, is that people will have skips in time. Some go on for hours, some almost days. But I don't know how true those are. Since then, things haven't felt right. I've been waking up with strange bruises on my arms and patterns that look like fingerprints. Maybe my phone glitches out whenever I try to talk about it. And last night, I woke up to a faint, high-pitched sound, like a ringing deep inside my head. When I looked out my window, the sky was empty, but my backyard grass was flattened to a perfect circle. So almost like that's almost newly formatted crop circles, and for the ringing in his ears, sounds like a device almost, or someone possibly aiming something at you. I've heard stories of governments playing around with weird technologies to do stuff like that, but that's creepy as is. I don't know what they did to me, but I think they're coming back. Now that's a wrap with that story, and I guess my words on that one are that I don't know how I feel about it, because it seems it's creepy, very very creepy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the whole idea of alien invasions or aliens coming to visit, but it's a fascinating concept. Now we got one more story for to be told before we wrap up tonight. And this one I've been excited to read. It's about the Mothman for those that have heard the stories. Hey, I don't know if you believe me, but I need to tell someone. Maybe saying it out loud make it feel less real. This happened a few years ago, and I've never talked about it. But lately I've been seeing things again, hearing things. I think it knows I saw it. I don't think it's done with me. I grew up in Royal, West Virginia, just outside of Point Pleasant. You know, that Point Pleasant, the one with all the Mothman stories, the collapsed bridge, the sightings, the museum with the creepy-ass statue. I've always wanted to go to this place. One of these days, I will travel there. People around here joke about it like it's a tourist attraction, but the older folks, man, they don't joke. They don't even like to talk about it. I always thought it was just a story, some urban legend to scare kids, until the night I saw it. Now, I don't know how true it is if people actually tell their kids about it, because it'd be a little, I guess to some people in this day and age, it'd just be a little malarkey. It was October, right around harvest season. My parents owned a small farm, and it was my job to make sure the scarecrows were still standing before the wind picked up for that night. It was late, the sky was dark, no moon, just a thick kind of fog that sits heavier over the fields. I had a flashlight, but it barely helped, just made shadows deeper. I was about halfway through the field when I heard it. A low clicking sound, like an insect, but too deep, too deliberate. Now if I recall, there was actually, probably not that, but I remember when living very, very far out, when I was younger, I used to hear things like that. Probably not too low, but I've heard clicking sounds before. I froze. Then something moved in the corner. Or in the corn. Oh, looks like a typo. Not the wind, not an animal. Something big. I swung my flashlight toward the sound. And there, just beyond the corn stalks, were two glowing red eyes. I couldn't move. I swear to God I tried. My body wouldn't listen. The eyes just stared at me, unblinking. Huge. They weren't like normal animal eyes reflecting light. They were glowing on their own. Almost like luminous. I wonder if it has to do with that weird bodily autonomy that some bugs and creatures have that fluorescent lighting. The thing took a step forward. I couldn't see its body, just the eyes, towering over me. Then the corn parted. I saw wings, massive wings, like a bat but wrong. Like they were made of shadows, shifting, curling at the edges. And the smell, Jesus, the smell, like a damp earth and rotting leaves. It let out this low rumbling sound deep in its chest, and suddenly I could move again. And I ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I barely made it back to the house, slammed the door shut, locked it. My heart was hammering, so I thought I was going to pass out. Now, for something that looks like a shadow, I don't think locking your door would do any good. But if it's physical, it's physical. If it's not, then you're screwed. I ran to the window, but there was nothing, just fog. My parents thought I was full of shit. Said it was probably an owl or a deer. I know what I saw. Now that's some foul language right there. 2 days later, my neighbor, Old Man Fisher, died in a tractor accident. A week after that, there was a pile-up on the highway just outside town. People died, and I started hearing it at night, the clicking, the whispers in my head, and those red eyes watching, waiting. I left town years ago. Thought I was safe, thought it was over. But lately, things have been happening again. The other night, I was walking home from work, and I heard it. The clicking. My phone's battery drained to 0 in seconds. Now, that's why I don't like messing with modern day contraptions. They don't last long anyways. And in the reflection of storefront window, I saw them. 2 red eyes, watching from the shadows. I don't know what's coming, but I think the Mothman is trying to warn me. Or maybe it's coming for me this time. And that's the end of that story. That's the end of that tale. Now, my final words on it before we wrap up tonight's broadcast. I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I love more stories about cryptics, more than paranormal and out there in the galaxy, out there in the world of the unknown. But cryptics have always had a special place in my heart, and I think they're the most entertaining to read. But that's my wrap up thoughts. But all good things must come to an end, even the stories we don't want to finish. You spent some time in the dark with me tonight, and now it's time to return to the light. If you can, just be careful. Sometimes when you listen to things that shouldn't be heard, they start listening back. Sweet dreams, dear listeners. Let's hope you wake up from where you're supposed to be. Good night, and see you in the next one.
Today, just discovered. You want to say goodbye?